This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Farzad Rashidi to the podcast. Welcome, Farzad.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason.
And you are from Respona, I guess. It's like response, but with an A at the end, so it's Respona, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, and it's good because it sticks out, and it's memorable. And I'm guessing that other variations on the theme of response, probably all those domain names and company names were taken. So hey, you had to deal with what you were left with, right?
Right. A lot of folks call it Responsa or Responda, and we don't have an S or a D in the name. That's it's a bit of a challenge, but nowadays folks are just Googling us to find us, and usually autocorrects itself. So it's not that big of a problem.
And you're based in D.C., right? So obviously things in D.C. are starting to heat up as things get closer and closer to the elections in the U.S., and so everything's getting a little bit crazy. Watched little tidbits of the debate the other night, and old Sleepy Joe, old Sleepy Joe was living up to his name, wasn't he?
It was very hard to watch, I'm not going to lie. Like, usually presidential debates in America are comical, but like at some point it just wasn't funny, and it was just like painful to watch. So yeah, God save us all this November. I feel like we don't have any good options, unfortunately. I don't think anybody in the country is happy with the debate or with any of the candidates. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I was definitely getting secondhand embarrassment, that's for sure.
To wonder.
But it does. But look, we don't get control over the hand we're dealt. We just have to play it. So at the end of the day, and that's what you've done for your career. Before we jump into what Respona is and how it works and why it came to be, how did you get into this space? Because Respona is not necessarily directly related to e-commerce, although there's a lot of e-commerce brands that use your platform for marketing purposes, etc. But like, you were director of marketing at Visme before starting Respona. What drew you into this crazy world of digital e-com marketing, etc.? What was the draw?
I've always had an interest in technology. I actually more on the engineering side of things before I started my career. And it was by happenstance that I came across Visme. At the time, I was just trying to make a presentation. And for folks who don't know what Visme is, it's a platform that lets businesses create presentations, infographics, and whatnot. We started around the same time as Canva. They obviously took over the world, and Visme is a little bit more upmarket. So we cater mainly to mid-market enterprise. And just to elaborate, when I joined the company, it was a few engineers that built a cool product, but nobody knew about it. I was a marketing major in college, so I cold emailed the founder and introduced myself. And I was like, hey, if you guys need any help, I can come in. And I ended up being the first marketing hire and started learning on the job. Hadn't had any sort of background in software marketing or sales. It was a matter of figuring out what throwing spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks, and tried all sorts of channels like paid ads and the hamster wheel of paid advertising and SEO and
Meta,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so ended up working out a really nice SEO strategy because our price point and the industry we were in was ripe for that, and we got it to a point that it was obviously through trial and error. It was not an overnight success by any measure, but we ended up growing that company to get around, I would say, 2.5 million visitors to our site every month. Has close to 30 million active users now to this day. And yeah, it was a wild ride. And that process of getting it to that point led to the creation of Respona, which was initially an internal software we had built. And it really helped us. So we decided to release it as a standalone product.
Love it. It really just comes back to scratching an itch and turning something that was a cost center into a profit center instead. And this is the traditional Amazon model, right? Hey, we have to have infrastructure for Amazon. Why don't we resell that infrastructure and make some money on it and turn it into AWS? So this feels like a very well-trodden path by a lot of development houses, product people, etc., especially in the SaaS world. What starts out as really scratching an itch and building against a need internally and saying, hey, if this works so well for us, surely there's got to be a market for this somewhere out there, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't as, when you look at things retrospectively, it's easy to connect the dots. You're like, yeah, we did A plus B and then equals C, but as you're going through the trenches, it wasn't quite as straightforward of a path. We were learning things as we went, and in the startup world, things changed quite rapidly. Us coming across Respona, it wasn't initially, as I said, meant to be a commercial built product, but We started putting it out there. A few other people asked for it. And we were like, yeah, let me get you access. And it was put together with duct tape, very ugly looking. And again, this is an internal piece of software. And so over time, we ended up cleaning it up, put up a landing page, and started getting some customers, and ended up getting a lot of good traction. So we invested more engineering resources in it and separated it out as a company. And yeah, it happened organically over time. It wasn't like a revelation we had. We woke up one day and we are like, yeah, let's start a brand new company. Yeah, but in retrospect, obviously made a lot of sense doing it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And if what you're building internally can be financed by the primary business model, and then you can turn that secondary business model into a revenue stream, then amazing. And it sometimes works out and sometimes doesn't if there's no ready-made market for it. It's so bespoke to you that you can't commercialize it or monetize it. But it sounds like you've done a very good job of monetizing the platform. You've been doing this for over 6 years now. So you don't get 6 years down the track from a startup and not have found some level of product market fit. So well done there. I know how hard that is to achieve.
I appreciate it.
And if I read what's on the TIM in full transparency, never used Respona before, so I'm definitely not an expert in the platform. You bill yourself as a technology platform that drives more organic traffic to your website. And you have this header on your site, these auto-populated phrases that then says on autopilot, booking podcasts, getting press, so basically earned media, building backlinks, doing outreach of varying different types on autopilot. Seeing as how I've never worked with the platform before, describe what Respona is in like the elevator pitch so that we can have an idea.
You sort of nailed it. That makes me happy that our landing page is straightforward and clear. Because a lot of the times you come across somebody's website and you're like, I have no idea what you guys do still. But yes, basically our platform is an outreach software that helps you. I think it's probably easier if I go through an example. So let's say you sell a certain type of product. Let's say you sell, I don't know, CBD gummies or something like that, or some sort of supplements. And so one of the ways that you could drive some traffic to the site is by reaching out to some bloggers that are writing reviews on a certain competitor or any listicles. Hey, what are some of the best CBD gummies? Or hey, what are some of the best supplements for after workout? Right? Usually those are done manually, and you do it a few times here and there, it goes missing. So what you could do with Respona is add it, for example, and put a monitor on your competitors, and you can see exactly where they're getting mentioned at. And then Respona will go and find these opportunities, get you the contact information of the right person at that publication or that business, gets you their emails and LinkedIn, and then it will actually, you connect your emails and it will send them a personalized message and starts the conversation for you. So getting your foot in the door, and then you take it over from there. So that's just one example, I would say, is a type of average you could do. Now you can replicate the same flow for different types of strategies. Say, now you want to be a guest on podcast. So you can monitor mentions of other people in your industry or certain keywords. You can find podcasts that are related that you could add value, reach out to the host, and essentially pitch yourself to go on as a guest. It's a great way to meet smart people like yourself and also get some exposure to their audience. And you get some of these links also in the door. So the more authoritative publications are talking about you, that also sends a signal to the search engines that, hey, these guys might be a reputable resource, because a lot of people, legitimate resources, are talking about them. So that also helps your landing pages, your own blog posts, your own website to show up in the search results as somebody's Googling them. Or nowadays with these AI tools, where they're getting trained is by multiple publications. So it's very important to get some of these product placements. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
Wow, very cool. Was I targeted by Respona? Is that
you
how
got
you came
me.
to be on this
Yes,
podcast?
absolutely.
So you eat your own dog food. I love that.
Yes, indeed. So actually, I go on one podcast once a week, and I'm booked actually for the next 3 months. So I told our guys to put our campaigns on pause because I can't afford to go on any more podcasts because I'm only allocated an hour a week. But it's been phenomenal. I've been on over 120 podcasts over the course of the past couple of years. And it's been a great way for me to meet, as I said, smart people in our industry like yourself. And that's the main reason I do it. But obviously, it's got a lot of byproducts to be a guest on podcasts.
Wow, amazing. I love it when people eat their own dog food and actually live what they preach, right? And live what they build against. Now, what would differentiate you guys, and I'm assuming this is primarily via email outreach or cold email outreach, what would differentiate you guys from something, say, like a Lemlist or some of the other email workflow automation technologies, automated outreach technologies that are out there in the market. Technologies that are really designed for like sales teams to be able to do outreach at scale and to be able to segment their potential target audience at scale. What would you say is your differentiating factor, VP, that you guys do different to some of these other, especially nowadays, these AI-driven technologies that craft the message, find the target, send it out on automated, send the follow-up automation, and it's all on autopilot, which is, to me, a little bit scary in terms of potential brand damage, personal and professional.
Right. So there's a couple of pieces to your question. One is how we're different. You just answered your question. So a lot of these tools that are in the market are built for salespeople. They're built for outbound sales. They're not for marketing-related outreach. You can't use a tool like Lemlist to monitor mentions of a competitor in a publication to find the author of that article and then read the article and summarize it, and based on what that talked about in that article, send them a message. Yeah. So you can do a lot of what Respona does. You can duct tape pieces. So sending out the email is what Lemlist does. So that's about 15% of the process. There is about 85% of the work that you still have to duct. And there are solutions for each one. There's social monitoring tools, there's email finder tools, there's others that you could duct tape together. What our value prop is that we're built specifically for marketing. So it's plug and play. So you can essentially just come in, plug in your keywords, use this template, and you're done. So it just builds an entire campaign for you from end to end. So you don't have to duct tape a bunch of different pieces together. We don't do any magic. It's scraping Google, it's finding context through LinkedIn, getting you the emails, validates them for you, and then uses OpenAI to personalize the pitch. All that work, it's stuff that are very clear. We're very clear with our sources too. It has all their logos on it. Hey, here's what it's doing. But the main value prop is that you can put the whole thing on autopilot in one platform, just plug and play, which the only way that you can actually do it at scale, because we were doing that exactly, the process using a bunch of different tools before we developed Respona. It was a mess. So we decided to build it in-house. But if you're doing outreach for sales purposes, for example, like Respona wouldn't be a great fit for that, because there are better tools. Like you can use Apollo, and then you can say, give me marketing managers and this segment of the market, and then you can send them emails. So that would be a better suited solution for that. But when it comes to marketing outreach, this type of outreach, like you want to go on as a guest on podcast, those are not what the tools that are built for. Second part is also harming your brand reputation. So a big part of Respona, when we say we were going to do this things on autopilot, there is a level of human supervision. So not a single email gets sent out without your prior approval. But what we do is we take care of the dirty work for you. So what you would normally have to hire a VA to do, we take care of for you on autopilot. But you still approve it. You still look at it before it gets out. So you still have maintained that same level of control as if you were to do it manually yourself. But the dirty work, okay, the finding of the piece, the validations, and the stuff that was done by VAs before, we take care of.
Wow, amazing, amazing. And so let's say I'm an e-commerce brand, and I don't know, I sell furniture or I sell clothing or whatever it might be, and let's say I already run something like a Klaviyo, or let's say I run a CDP, and then I push that out I create my segments in the CDP, and then I push those segments maybe into Meta Google so that I can do some remarketing, retargeting. There is definitely some pretty solid marketing automation platforms for e-commerce merchants, but it feels like that is for an audience that has either already visited your website, has already purchased through you, has already subscribed to you, etc. But it doesn't allow you to go out and necessarily use those tools for new customer or new relationship. Let's just call it relationships. Whether it's you're trying to find buyers of your products, whether you're trying to be on a podcast, whether you're trying to contribute to a blog, it doesn't really matter. But when you're trying to do outbound relationship building, these tools, these marketing automation tools for e-commerce specifically, they're not designed for that. They're designed for people that opt in to hear from you, and then that becomes a marketing channel. Maybe SMS becomes a marketing channel, and maybe they aggregate that all together, and then, of course, it becomes your remarketing hub at the same time. But you guys, it feels you are all about new customer or new relationship acquisition via outbound marketing that is tailored and targeted to the exact cohort that you're trying to reach to build a relationship.
Yep, exactly. You nailed it. For example, you mentioned furniture, like one of our customers, Couch.com. We're going to do a case study with them.
I've had Couch.com on the podcast. I recently had Had them on. I had them on
Oh,
3
that's
months ago.
amazing. So I guess I'm not sure for this particular episode, but if you ask them how you got the intro, I think they used Respona.
They reached
Yeah,
out to us. They reached out to
Alex.
me, and Alex reached out to me and wanted to be on the podcast, and that's how he came on
They're
the
a
podcast.
Respona customer, so I'm almost certain that they've used our platform to get a book on your podcast.
To identify me.
So what they do is essentially, they're very smart people. They have an excellent site. You should definitely visit their site, couch.com. But essentially, yeah, so Alex goes on a lot of podcasts. We already elaborated on that use case. But like another thing that they do is that they, for example, reach out to a lot of interior design blogs or another website publications in their space that are not necessarily competing with them, but they're essentially overlapping audience-wise. So they collaborate with each other on a content level. So they earn a lot of links mentions from other websites in their space. And that helps their domain authority go up and for their landing pages to start showing up. And then that's how they're monetizing their essentially affiliate arrangements. That would be another use case that a company would use us for. Now, you can't do that with Klaviyo because that's built for your existing audience, for your customer base, which is an entirely different thing. We handle that relationship building, outbound marketing, outreach, I would say.
Now, one of the biggest concerns I've always had about doing this kind of outreach is having my domain blacklisted, meaning my emails are blacklisted, running afoul of spam laws, etc. How do you get around that challenge of your domain potentially being blacklisted for spam? How do you deal with that whole challenge of brand damage, domain damage, etc. on behalf of your customers?
So if you're sending spam emails, you're going to end up in spam. So there's no way around it. There's no software or technology that can help you not landing spam if you're sending. So number one thing is don't send spam emails. Now, a lot of the times that becomes a bigger problem when you're doing outbound sales, because what is an outbound sales email? Hey, give me your money in exchange for my service. People are a lot less likely to want to engage with that. But when it comes to the type of outreach you do with Respona, you're adding value a lot of the time. So these are mutually beneficial collaborations. Like I reach out to you, Jason, and hey, let me come and spend an hour of my time, educate your audience. I help you create an episode. In exchange, I get some exposure to my audience. So these are the mutually beneficial collaborations that you do with Respona a lot of the time. So the reply rates, open rates, engagement to your emails are night and day different from the outbound techniques your sales team uses, for example. So it's not nearly as big of a problem for us than it is for a lot of other tools. But when it comes to, I would say, email deliverability, obviously there's a bunch of, we have a checklist. We don't offer any services, by the way. We're just a software company. But Respona runs like these email health reports for each one of your emails. So you make sure that you have that done correctly, like your DNS records and whatnot. Also, when it comes to the sending algorithm, Respona emulates human behavior when it comes to sending. So you set like a daily limit on each one of the emails. So each one sending 20 emails a day. And then it's sporadic throughout the day with dynamic delays.
Or you're warming. You're doing domain and IP warming.
In a way, yes, not network-based warming, but essentially when it comes to sending, the sending is done in a slow but sure. It's sent surely but slowly. But essentially, that's the extent of what we do. But at the end of the day, regardless of your tech stack, if you're sending emails that are spamming, you're going to have trouble with email providers. But we do an average for 12 years. We even do average through our own Respona.com domain, which I'm sure that's the email you got, an email from us. And so it's because we were very careful in terms of the emails we send. Also, what Respona helps you do, which is very cool when it comes to email durability, is doing personalization at scale. So, for example, what Vlad did, our team member who reached out to you, or Yvonne, I'm not sure which one of them. But anyhow, so what Respona does is that not only finds the website, finds a podcast in this case, and validates the metrics, make sure that it's a popular podcast. Your podcast, by the way, in the top 10% globally in terms of listenership. So if you didn't know that, yeah.
Wow.
Props to you.
Thank you. I did not know that. I had no idea. Thank you.
Of course. So you're doing a great job. Keep up the great work. But so not only we found a podcast that is relevant to us that we think that we can add value and it's popular, so there's some listenership, but also what it does, he actually pulls the latest episodes of the podcast and then actually listens to the interview. And based on the transcript, it will actually generate a personalized like iceberg sentence and personalize the emails. So not a single email that comes out of Respona is the same for each campaign. So emails are deeply personalized for each recipient. So that way, because especially when you do cold outreach, it's inevitable some small percentage of your audience will mark emails as spam. So email provider associate that template with spam. So it's less likely that will end up in the inbox tab versus like the promotions or the spam filter. So essentially what we want to do is to generate unique emails so that it's, even if one person marks as spam, it still wouldn't impact the performance of the rest of the recipients. So that's also another factor to keep in mind. So like the emails are also deeply tailored to each recipient as well.
And do you usually recommend that people who sign up for your service register a dedicated domain name just for sending emails via Respona? Like, for example, if I wanted to do outreach and I wanted to appear on podcasts, for example, and I didn't want to risk my Greenwood Consulting domain for whatever reason, I just didn't even want to put it at risk of ever being marked with any kind of spam tag. Would I go out there? I could register a domain like Jason Greenwood Podcast Guest, or it might be. I could register whatever domain it would be relevant to the type of outreach that I was wanting to do, and then I could use that domain name specifically for sending outbound email via your technology. Is that something that you typically recommend, or is that? Do you feel it's not necessary? Do you feel it's overkill? Do you feel it's paranoia? Where do you land on this topic?
So email deliverability is quite a complex issue. So I'm happy to spend more time on it if you'd like to discuss it more in depth. But there is pros and cons to each approach. So there's two, I would say, opposite ends of the spectrum. More risky way is just doing outreach through your main domain, through your main email address. What is a pro to that is that you get the highest amount of deliverability opens or replies. Why? Because
highest domain authority.
Exactly, because that domain is attached to a legitimate web property, which is your domain, and it's been around for a while. So essentially, you have the highest chance of landing in the inbox using that type of email. The other end of the spectrum is just you go buy a random domain that resembles, and then set up a 3-1 redirect, so it redirects to your site, and then you just create other email accounts through that domain. What the pro is that obviously you keep the reputation entirely separate from your domain, but con to that is that you get nowhere near the deliverability as you would get when it comes to running outreach through your domain. An alternative way, which is somewhere in the middle, that it still carries some risk, but it still has the benefit of the other side, is to create a subdomain. For example, if you have like Respona.com, you can create like outreach.respona.com. We still carry that same reputation of the main domain, but still is siloed out to that subdomain in terms of the reputation. But obviously, if you're going to do outreach at scale at level that you're going to be spamming people, I would just create a dummy domain. But it's usually not a great idea. You have to, and those get burnt out quickly, so you have to rotate them. So it's not an approach that we do internally. We actually do our own outreach through our main domain. And the reason why we do it that way is that there's a little, I call it the Farzad test. Essentially, when you send an email or when you create a campaign, when you get to that last step, when it's review and launch, I would put myself in shoes of the recipient. I'm like, if I get this email to my inbox, would I reply to it or not? And you'd be surprised, 90% of people that are running campaigns through us before they do their onboarding session, when they set up their campaigns on their own, and I ask them, would you reply to this email yourself? The answer, no, absolutely not. So I'm like, why are you sending it to other people then? That makes no sense. So you're just now spamming at that point because you wouldn't even reply to your own email. So don't send it to other people. Any email that we send, I would reply to myself. And trust me, I get a ton of emails in my inbox, and I rarely ever reply to cold emails. But the type of email addresses that we send, check a few boxes that would make me likely to reply to it myself. And those, obviously, there's a level of personalization that's needed in the formatting the email, all that groundwork that needs to be done. But the main piece of it is incentives. What's in it for the recipient? So what is it that you can do for them? And that's usually the focal point of the first email. So almost, if you ever get a cold email from us, it's usually us trying to do something for you. To the level that wouldn't raise suspicion that you're like, okay, what's the catch? No, it's quite clear. My team members reached out to you and complimented your podcast, mentioned something from your podcast, and said, hey, I actually have my founder who'd be interested in coming as a guest on the show. Is this something that you think would be a fit? Worst case is that you say, no, I don't think it's a good fit. Or in this case, I was honored that you said yes. But a lot of the times, like, we get insanely high reply rate to those emails because there is a benefit to the recipient. So That's hard to do when it comes to sales, right? So that's why, as I said, it's not in the same realm of the average that you do. So these are mutually beneficial collaborations, which is far from spam if you actually are doing it right. So that's my 2 cents there.
Hey team, I have a big favor to ask you. Please pause this episode and send the link of this episode to someone you know that you think would enjoy this content. Really appreciate you spreading the word. This is how we grow. We're not a Joe Rogan. We don't have big, massive advertising budgets, but we absolutely want to grow. We want to get the learnings from all of these episodes out to as wide of an audience as possible, and we need your help to do it. Thank you, and now back to your listening. And I guess the reality is if you've got a blog or you've got a podcast or whatever the case may be, and let's just use me as a guinea pig example. Let's say hypothetically that I wanted to do outreach and I didn't want to be spammy, but I wanted to hopefully open up an avenue of discussion with potential clients of my services, not necessarily targeting them specifically and saying, hey, buy my stuff. Mm-hmm. But if I wanted to take a slightly different approach and say, look, why don't I go after my target market, but ask them to be on my podcast, because they are not only are they a great target potential opportunity to open up a dialogue about doing business with, but they would also make a fantastic podcast guest at the same time. And it's easier to break the ice when you're basically saying, hey, look, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I'd love to learn from you. I'd love to put your name up in lights. And then, hey, look, if that leads to a further business discussion, great. But if it doesn't, then no skin off of either of our noses. Hopefully both sides are winners. Then it feels like that would feel like, and I guess that also makes the case for people who are in the services industry or who are trying to sell products or whatever it might be, like me. It definitely makes the business case for creating a podcast, for creating a blog, for creating a hub for content that people not only get value out of, but they want to contribute to. And it feels like that really, if you're wanting to build either a personal or professional brand, it really does make the case for putting out really useful, beneficial, helpful content that people A, want to consume, but B, want to contribute to, so that they get some of the halo effect of being associated with that professional brand, right?
Again, I'm no expert on outbound sales, but that seems like a great strategy. You're definitely on the right track. That would probably be along the lines of what I would do. Now, a lot of people don't have the luxury of having a top tier podcast. It's a lot of work, and it's power to you. That you have a strength you can play on. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you to at least give it a try and experiment with that approach if you haven't done it yet.
Yeah, no, it's because I'm not an outbound guy. I'd rather be a magnet than a lasso. So I don't really like the whole, it just feels, and I think companies have seen a lot of success with outbound sales orientated emails. So I'm not saying it doesn't work. I just think for me personally, and even Alex Hormozy, who's probably one of the best marketers in the world, he talks about how to structure your outbound motion, right? An outbound cold motion. And so the reality is that even the greatest marketers in the world, it feels like at some point they will have some form of an outbound sales motion. And so I'm not saying it doesn't work at all. I think, but to personal brands, I think there's just a super high risk in that environment that you are perceived as spammy, that you are perception is reality for people, right? And if you start to build up a reputation as the guy who sends spammy sales emails, that the stink of that can follow you around for a very freaking long time. And you could have spent 10 years, as I have, building a personal brand, and it only takes one wrong email to the one wrong person, and you can do a lot of brand damage in a very short period of time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we've tried outbounds for sales and weren't very successful with it, so I wouldn't feel confident sharing tips on a strategy that I don't have success with personally. What has worked really well for us is getting product placements on other people's websites, getting as a guest on podcasts, and different types of techniques to get people to come onto our website through outbound collaborations with other brands and not necessarily outbound sales, direct sales. That said, it doesn't mean it wouldn't work with other people that are doing this. Obviously, this is a valid strategy, and it changes quite often. It's not something that you get it to work and you can replicate it easily. It's something that usually takes every few months. You have to adjust and tweak. But again, yeah, outbound for sales and outbound for marketing, the type of outreach that we do, are completely different worlds that require different types of techniques and expertise.
And I guess Respona could also be used for recruiting, like for staff, and trying to find the right fit people to come and work on your teams and to say, look, do you know anybody? If it's not, even if you're not trying to recruit necessarily the exact person you're sending the email to, but you're saying, hey, we're looking for somebody with these skills. Do you know anybody that you could recommend to us? And maybe we'll give you a referral bonus if we end up hiring that person or something like that. It feels like Respona could be used for quite a lot of different types and styles of relationship building, even to the point of creating, almost running your influencer marketing outreach model through a platform like Respona, so that you could actually create those relationships with influencers, things like that. It feels like Respona can be used not just necessarily for e-com specific marketing type functions or personal brand building functions, but it's almost unlimited in terms of the types of relationships you might want to build via the Respona platform.
The fact that you can is undisputable. What I would argue with that logic is that there are better tools for recruitment. Like you can use Signal Hire and stuff that is purpose built for recruiting. That would definitely work a lot better in our platform. Or for influencer marketing, say if you want to get in touch with Instagram models, like there are other tools like Upfluence or Hype Auditor, et cetera, that would help you get there a lot faster than if you were to use a tool that's not purpose built for that. So again, tools are quite specialized. Everybody's good at certain things. And it doesn't mean you can't cross-use them for different, like we have folks that use it for outbound sales, or I use it for recruitment myself, actually. I have some of our engineers we hired running an outbound campaign through Respona. But again, it's not to say, hey, if you're looking to recruit team members, you should come sign up for Respona, because there are better tools out there that are built for that. But when it comes to marketing outreach, hey, if you want to build partnerships, brand collaborations, content collaborations, either for SEO purposes or to essentially get some exposure for your brand, that's really what we're focused on. And that's, I would argue, we're the best solution to market for that. Even though the tool is somewhat versatile, it can be used for other purposes as well.
Okay. And what, if we were to look out 6, 12, 18 months from now, what does the platform not do today that you think either you should be doing or that your customers are asking for that you don't yet do, that you want to expand the platform to cover some additional bases?
Yeah, so every 2 weeks we have new feature drops, and we're quite fast moving, and we take pride in that we're constantly improving the platform. A few things we're adding next that would be somewhat exciting is adding other sources for finding opportunities. So right now we have podcasts, we have web, so essentially Google and competitor backlinks, but we also have plans to add YouTube to the mix. You essentially would be able to find YouTube channels that you can reach out to, and the same functionality, same flow works the same for them. So we'll actually watch the video, and based on what they've talked about, we'll actually send a personal message, so you can essentially start a collaboration with them that way. So it's stuff that we could do unique in a marketplace that hasn't been done before. And also we're working a lot on, and not only, so we've been so far focused entirely on the outreach piece of it. And we also have tools built out that you can manage those relationships after someone replies to get them to the finish line. So those are stuff that we're also working on, improving, automating a lot of those workflows, because we have agencies that are offering this type of service to tens of clients, and they run their whole operation through Respona. So they need a ton of support when it comes to, okay, someone replied to me, that's what do we do now? And having those type of features built out is also a priority for us, and which we've already accomplished probably 70-80% of it, but we've still got some ways to go.
Love it. At least you've got a roadmap that's never ending. Being able to differentiate yourself is always a great thing. Now, how do you guys make your money? You're a SaaS platform, and as I understand it, you've got these tiers. You got the $3.99 a month tier, you got a $7.99 a month tier, and then you got an enterprise class, custom negotiated tier, and then that's basically based on this model of credits, right? That buys you a certain number of credits and a certain number of send opportunities and a certain number of email accounts that can be supported through the platform. So I guess it's really just that typical SaaS model. Here's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then hey, look, if you're crazy and you need to be able to support 100 email addresses and a massive marketing team, then let's talk.
Yeah, we have 3 tier plans, as you mentioned. One is for in-house teams. So if you just have one brand or 1 or 2, I would say, websites you want to promote, we have our pro package. And the unlimited is usually for smaller agencies, like 5 to 10 client range. And anybody, there's usually other agencies that have over 10 clients, or I would say 10 to 20 more plus clients. Then we usually have our enterprise plan. And enterprise plan is actually quite popular. I know a lot of SaaS companies, they just have an enterprise just so they have it. But we actually have quite a few, great chunk of our customers that are on the enterprise package, because they usually come in on a pro plan, and then they like it and they expand and graduate into the next steps over time, which is great. It's a great indication of product market fit and retention. But yeah, so that's our pricing is also publicly available to everybody. We're very transparent with everything. We also have free
It's very
trial
transparent,
and so all the good stuff. So we don't force people into talking to us unless they want to actually get a training session or get onboarded.
Love it. Love it. One suggestion, come out with a creator plan for individual creators like me, individual personal brands that are just, I don't have a team. The team is me. Come out with a plan that was accessible for the small one-man band type of personal brands. Maybe go back to the drawing board and see what you can come to the party with for small little guys like
So
me.
we actually had a plan like that, and we used to call it the starter package. And a problem with that was the limits that we would have to limit the platform quite a lot to get to that price point, because we give premium data to our customers. And so if you want to reduce the price that much, you would have to. So it wasn't to the point that we would get a ton of value from the system, because it was so limiting at some point. And also, we get a ton of traction. A lot of people sign up, but they're not usually our greatest ICP, so they would churn. So retention was a problem, because we have excellent retention on Pro, Unlimited, and Enterprise, but the starter package was a hit or miss. And partly is also because we spend a lot of time and energy onboarding the customers, making sure they're getting max value from our system, not just from a training perspective, how to use the product, but mainly in terms of strategy, what to do, what to say. We have a lot of good data we share, because as I said, 90+% of our customers, they're sending bad emails. So changing that behavior, it takes a bit of a human touch to get them going. And so that's why we decided to retire that and focus a little bit on folks that have a couple of team members that can actually make this a success. But I'm with you. I love nothing but to bring down the price. And I think maybe at a future point, maybe when we're a little bit more mature, it would make sense to revisit that once we have a clear cut, I would say, flow that would make the one-on-one onboarding eliminated, so that we can scale it and essentially open it up a little bit more. But yeah, we have that price barrier just to make sure the folks that come in and sign up are the ones that are serious and are actually looking to put in the effort, so that we reciprocate that by giving them that white glove service.
Makes complete sense to me. That was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but no, appreciate the thoughts for us poor little guys that are trying to do everything themselves from a personal brand perspective. Really, I'm no Gary Vee yet. I don't have 15 people on brand Jason Greenwood like Gary Vee. I think he's up to 20 or 25 people just working on brand Gary Vee these days. So he's putting a pretty big investment into brand Gary Vee, that's for sure. But hey, listen, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've learned a ton about what you guys do. It's super cool. I like it. I love the fact that this is outbound marketing, not outbound sales. I like the fact that this is very sure. Of course, you can't control everything that your customers do. And yes, it could be used technically to spam people, but that's going to pretty quickly kill their domain. It's going to pretty quickly snuff itself out if that's the path that they go down. And so I think the tools that you provide to help people not spam, but be very helpful and offer high value as part of the outreach that they do. I think it all comes down to intent at the end of the day, right? Do you have an intent to help people, and hopefully that will also derive some benefit for you, or is it really you first and them second, third, fourth, and fifth down the line? I guess if really the idea and the intent is, hey, let's do something, let's collaborate on something that's mutually beneficial, then how could somebody get mad at that? Even if they say no, it's unlikely that they're going to mark you as spam. They might say no, or they might not respond, but it's very unlikely that they're going to mark you as spam. And so I think that intent piece is real important. And so I understand why you onboard people, why you go through this very detailed process of saying, look, you might not want to send that email because that's pretty spammy. And look, I love that, and I have a lot of respect for you as a result of that, because it means that by definition, you're shrinking your ICP, you're niching down, you're basically making your funnel smaller by definition. And by intent, you're making your funnel smaller, and you're not trying to be all things to all people. And I think that's a really transparent and honest thing that you're doing. So kudos to you for that. Now, as we come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you, let you ask me one question, any question you like. So, Farzad from Respona, what is your question for me today?
Okay. Does it have to be work related or?
Nope. Could be personal
I
or
have so many
professional.
questions, because you told me that you live in Mexico, and it's one of my life goals to actually do the nomadic life for a little while. So I'm hoping to start that actually next year. And Mexico is it's at the top of the bucket list. So I'd love to come down there and spend a couple of months working remote and just get a little villa and sit by the beach and sip mimosas. And it sounds like the
good place
Yeah,
to do
so I
it.
was going to ask you where you would recommend me doing that because I don't speak a word of Spanish. So I don't really want to go to the touristy like Cancun and sit in a resort. I'd rather be in the city and get to know the culture. So where in Mexico would you recommend me to do that if I were to come down there?
So we did 20,000 kilometers last year by car driving around Mexico. We just did the digital nomad thing for the whole of 2023. We stayed in, we had a short list when we left New Zealand of places that we thought might be suitable to make a home
Uh-huh.
in, and in those major places we stayed around a month for 2 to 5 weeks in each of those major places. But in the smaller places and in the in between places, we might stay a week, we might stay a week and a half, something like that. So we covered a lot of ground. So we didn't do anything in Baja. It was all in mainland Mexico, but we covered almost all the states of Mexico, and we covered a lot of ground. And Puerto Escondido, in terms of beach cities, because what's popular with Americans is Cabo, Mazatlan, Puerto Vallarta, Acapulco, and then if you go on to the Caribbean side, you're looking at Quintana Roo and you're looking at the Riviera Maya, and so you're really thinking Cancun, Playa Tulum. Those are really like the hot
Mm-hmm.
spots. And yes, you will get in any one of those major beach towns, you will get at least in the tourist center of those towns, you will get a lot of English spoken. Now, you don't have to go very far outside those areas to all of a sudden get a very steep drop off of English being spoken. Most Americans find themselves quite surprised as they're traveling around Mexico how little English is spoken here. If I didn't have, luckily, I took it for 2 years in high school, and it came back reasonably quickly. And I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but I'm
Nice.
conversational, and it's enough to be able to get by. And I tell you, without that, because my wife doesn't speak a word of Spanish, and her second language, she's Chinese Vietnamese, and so for her, learning Spanish was going to be a real challenge, like a real challenge. And she's working on it now. If I needed to speak Cantonese, then I would just refer to her. But I think that Puerto Escondido, which is on the Oaxacan coast, so the state of Oaxaca, they've got what's known as the Verde coast or the green coast there. There's a lot of small beach towns along that
Uh-huh.
coast there. And Puerto Escondido is one of those, and it's probably the most well known on that part of the coast. And it's nice. It's relatively small. It isn't covered up with tourists yet. There are tourists there, but there are a lot of Mexicans that live there still. It's certainly not nearly as well known as a place like Mazatlan or Cabo or Cancun. And so you'll get a lot of backpackers through there as
Okay.
well. People that are like traveling, backpacking around, just trying to see the more remote parts of
Uh-huh.
Mexico. So that would be my recommendation. We really enjoyed Puerto Escondido. We had a great time there. We thought it was
I'm
really
looking
cool.
up pictures as you speak, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. So that yeah, I saved it in my notes. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. You'll have a great time there. I know that we did it, but man, go in winter. So a lot of people think that summertime is when you want to go to beaches in Mexico. Summer is the wet season. Winter is the dry season. So
Ah,
winter doesn't get cold in the beach cities. It just gets dry. So the humidity drops
I
right
see.
down. So if for 6 months of the year during summer, in spring and summer, the Mexican coasts are like muggy furnaces, and a lot of people don't really understand that. But winter is stunning. It's still warm, it's still sunny, it's still hot, but you have very low humidity levels. So go sometime during winter. Go October, November, December, January, like October through April kind of thing is really when you want to go. Outside of that, it can be really difficult for people to stomach if they don't come from a high heat, high
Right.
humidity place, like
That's fair.
DC, for
Yeah,
example.
exactly. Winters are horrific. So yeah, I would love a chance to escape. So thank you for that.
Mexico's the perfect place to escape during North American
Exactly.
winter.
And also the time zones are the same. So it works out perfectly. Yeah. Okay. I'm sold. Thank you.
Exactly.
This is amazing. When I'm down
Love
there,
it.
Jason, we got to grab a beer or something.
100%. First round of margaritas is on me. Listen,
Thank you.
Farzad, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. You're super passionate about what you do. You're super knowledgeable. Really appreciate you sharing your time with me today, and I can't wait to speak with you
My
again soon,
pleasure.
my
Thank
friend.
you so much for having me, Jason. This was fun.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.